Heather, did you want to pop on? You had some great questions here. You can unmute yourself, love. How you doing?
Hi, thank you. I am I guess what I didn't know, because you don't know until you know, is that I had severe like neck trauma for a very long time, and I was just in excruciating pain where I couldn't even look sideways. And so I started working with a chiropractor and with him. Then after a while, I started implementing massages through the massage therapist. So a lot of my pain is kind of at the the point where your spine meets your back. And I just started working out with resistance bands to strengthen these back muscles, is what my doctor told me to do. So I started doing that, and it's just so much pain. I mean, it's excruciating after every workout. So I guess, and he's kind of answered it. I'll email you and ask you what I should work on back there to strengthen that. But then, what does that look like when do we do it for 40 minutes a day? Do we do it the stretching multiple times throughout the day? Like, how does that look when we are stretching ourselves at home?
Mhm. All great questions. Well, I will say that in terms of the frequency, that's something that you can customize for your own desires. And you could do a flow, which is to go through all the major muscle groups in the body. And you could do that in 20 minutes. If you're very disciplined, you might wake up every morning and do that. I'm not very disciplined. I'm learning to be that way physically. Typically, what I do is I like to dance throughout the week. And as I'm dancing, I'm stretching as well. So I'm kind of doing a little bit of both. Yeah, there you go. And I also sometimes have been like, I haven't really dug into myself. And so like last night, I spent a couple hours working on myself in certain positions, certain muscle groups. The best is when I have other people who can find my blind spots because there's a lot that I'm unconscious of and have other people on my case. And they're like, you need this. We're going to do this. I'm like, okay, okay, okay. So that would be ideal if you have someone that can do that. And then in terms of your neck, most of the stuff happening in the upper body is coming from the lower body because we're upright creatures, we're bipeds. But if our true posture was being shown without our mental control, we'd probably look a little bit more like, in all these weird kind of weird positions. And then since we can adapt, we stand up straight and we look, like, upright citizens. And so what's happening is that everyone's hamstrings need a lot of work. And until those get long, there's going to be substitution at the pelvis. The pelvis is going to be too tilted anteriorly. It might be too tucked under. One way or another, there's going to be a lot of substitution at the hip girdle and then the pelvic girdle. And then the base of the spine is then going to try to either hyperextend or hyperflex. And then there might be some twisting if they have scoliosis. All the spine is just trying its best to sit on an unstable base. And then in the cervical spine in particular, that's getting more towards the extreme. And so ultimately, the hip girdle needs to be stabilized. The hip flexors and hamstrings need to be stretched. So then the pelvic girdle is more stable. Then you'll have more abdominal support. And then you could also target these muscles in the backside of your shoulder. Like one you could do is lifting your arm, wrapping, and then just bringing your arm down and across. My arm keeps lifting, bringing your arm down and across. And that's going to target your upper traps. And it's going to target posterior deltoids and the backside of your shoulder. Continue to lift up with my arm and then pulling down and across with my other hand. And then when you're doing this, you have to figure out which vector is the one that's tightest. Is it tighter when you go across your body or when you go more up and down? Like, where does it feel like there's a lot of dense tissue? It's harder to move. And that's going to give you a pinpoint into very specific muscle groups in your upper body. And you can go through all 8 muscle groups and figure out which ones really targeted the areas that you really needed addressed. And is it giving you the result that you really want? If so, then you might be able to problem solve it through your upper body, but you'll probably find that you need to also work on your lower body. So that can all change.
Thank you so much for that. I was focusing up top and not enough on below, so I'll have to incorporate that more too.
Yeah, and remember, they're going to always teach you to do strength training at physical therapy and in personal training. Nothing wrong with strength training, but it's not what I'm trying to get the message across here. It's the reverse. It's during the negative phase when you're overcoming that outside force. No one's getting enough of that phase of movement. That's not muscular, that's fascial. That's the phase. The strength is actually built on top of flexibility. So if you don't have flexibility, you're only strengthening 40% of your optimal strength. You have to actually have a base to strengthen. And then once you remove all that dense tissue, you've renovated the house. The house doesn't need to be renovated every weekend. It just needs to be renovated once. And so now you've got a new house, and you're still going to need to stretch in order to keep it clean. You can clean the house every once in a while, but it doesn't have to be renovated. At that point, you can develop all the strength you want, but it's out of order. The doctors, and I'm glad that they're teaching you to work on these muscle groups. It's a start, because most people would think, oh, the person's too tight in the chest, got to open up the chest. So they're starting to get the idea that these muscles in the back need to be worked. They're just needing to know more about the fascial component and the negative phase of movement, not the strength movement, but the stretch movement.